spend some time thinking about. Okay. Margaret.
Josh, the president campaigned so vigorously for Hillary Clinton on the trail, working this so hard. I know you can't read sentiment this early on, truly, and discern what the message was, but can you at least say why you think the White House's own internal predictions and read were so wrong?
Yeah. Well, listen, it's not just our read of this that was wrong. Just about every public poll that we saw was wrong. You guys will check me on this because you guys follow this a little bit more closely than I did. I'm not aware that either candidate campaigned in Wisconsin. And I think that's a clear indication that everybody, including both candidates, expected Secretary Clinton to win Wisconsin. And she didn't. And it's not close enough that anybody's calling for a recount. So it is clear that nobody got the outcome that they expected last night. Now, does that mean that the polling industry has now been officially disrupted, or that political consultants are going to have to change the way they do business? Maybe, and that'll be something interesting for them to consider over the next couple of years. But I think it's just hard to tell exactly what the message was. As I referred to, what the message from voters is. As I mentioned earlier, there are a substantial number of voters that voted for Barack Obama twice and then voted for Donald Trump yesterday. And given the vigorous opposition that President-elect Trump professed to have for the Obama agenda, it raises a lot of questions about why those voters supported him. And the answer to that is not obvious to me. Maybe it is to somebody else. And I suspect that political analysts and academics and political professionals, are going to spend days and weeks and months and maybe even years digging into these results and trying to get greater clarity to explain the outcome.
Does this in some way, I mean, the president, you talked about some of the rhetoric he's used, but he used very stark terms saying that, the very future of the republic is hinged on this election, that it was a defense of American values. Really laying the stakes in very stark terms. So, I mean, does he still believe that today, that the viability of the America he believes this country is at stake?
Listen, as I mentioned earlier, the argument that the president was making on the campaign trail was an authentic one. It reflected his views. It wasn't just a slogan. It wasn't just a bumper sticker. He was making an argument that he deeply believes about the direction that he'd like to see the country go.
But he doesn't believe democracy is at risk. I mean, the future of the republic, that's it. He said that repeatedly in North Carolina and elsewhere.
The president made a forceful argument, and he stands by that argument, but the time for making that argument has passed. The American people render their judgment, and President Obama doesn't get to choose his successor, the American people do. And they did. And they didn't choose the person that President Obama supported. And so now the responsibility that President Obama has is to turn his attention to prioritizing a smooth transition with his successor and ensuring a peaceful transition of power. But frankly, the president's aspirations are higher than just a peaceful transition of power. He wants to make sure that we've got an effective transition that gives the next president the opportunity to get a running start. Because now that the election's over, it's a good time to remember that we're Americans first, and all of us are rooting for the success of President Trump as he assumes the awesome responsibility of trying to unite and lead this country.
Can you tell us any color around how this happened last night? Who informed the president? How he spent his evening?
The president was monitoring returns from the residents last night. I don't have a lot of details to share from there. Obviously, he relied on staff to help coordinate the calls that he placed last night to Secretary Clinton and to President-elect Trump, respectively. And he stayed up late in order to do that. He wasn't able to reach President-elect Trump until after President-elect Trump had delivered his remarks last night, so it was rather late. But you know, and obviously we had to work through staff in order to make that happen.
And the president, if he goes on this trip, as you said, or you said that schedule's not changing,
Mhm.
how is he going to explain to allies what happened? I mean, the president on mostly all of his recent foreign trips has basically said he's confident Hillary Clinton's going to win. None of what just transpired was going to happen.
Mhm.
What is his message going to be? I mean, it would seem to be redirecting what was going to be a farewell visit.
Yeah, well, listen, the president spent a lot of time on his foreign travels over the last 12 to 18 months, offering reassurance to our partners and allies around the world about the state of the political debate in this country and the likely outcome of the election. And now that we have an outcome of the election, I think the president will continue to offer reassurance to our closest allies and partners about the steadfast commitment of the United States to the kinds of alliances and partnerships that advance our interests and keep our country safe. Many of our strongest alliances are alliances that have been fortified by Democratic and Republican presidents. And President Obama obviously invested a lot of his own time and attention to prioritizing investments in many of those alliances, particularly in the Asia Pacific. And President-elect Trump will chart a foreign policy path that he believes is in America's best interest. He will do so after getting the benefit of briefings from President Obama and from the national security experts in the Obama administration that have been implementing that policy and implementing that strategy. But you know, I think the reassurance that President Obama can offer to a lot of our allies is that traditionally, and for generations in some cases, our alliances have transcended individual presidents and individual political parties, in part because some of our alliances are rooted in the deep cultural ties between our two countries. You know, but ultimately, it's going to be up to the president-elect to decide. Okay, Carol.